If the pattern you plan to use calls for a yarn that is not available in your area or is discontinued, or if you want to choose a different yarn for some other reason, you will have to substitute the yarn recommended in the pattern with a compatible yarn. It is very important to make sure the yarn we choose for the project can give us the texture and the gauge suggested in the pattern. There is a simple and quite accurate way to substitute yarns. It never failed me once, and I hope it will help you too. There are just 3 simple steps to follow. Let's assume that I'm about to make a project designed for this yarn, Haydenville by Valley Yarns. And let's assume that for some reason I don't want to use this yarn and I want to substitute it with a different yarn. The first thing to do would be to look up the yarn recommended in the pattern. If you don't have a label for this yarn like I do, you can easily look it up online. We need 2 bits of information about that yarn. First, we need to know the fiber content, and this is mentioned right here. This yarn is 60% superwash merino and 40% acrylic. Then we need to know the number of meters or yards in a certain number of grams or ounces. In this case, it is 220 yards, that's 200 meters, in a 100-gram ball. Now we need to find the yarn that has a similar fiber content, that is, in this case it would be wool or preferably superwash merino wool or acrylic, because this yarn is a blend, so you can go both ways, and the yarn that has about the same number of meters or yards in the same number of grams. I happen to know about the yarn called Nitka Superwash. This yarn is 100% superwash merino wool, which is perfect, right? This one is 60% superwash merino, so that's a great fit. And this yarn has 100 meters in a 50-gram ball. And if we look at these 2 labels, we will see that these yarns are a perfect match, because 100 meters in a 50-gram ball is exactly the same thing as 200 meters in a 100-gram ball, right? And if we look at these 2 yarns, then we will see that even visually these yarns are a pretty good match. And of course, you can choose any color you like. You don't have to choose exactly the same color as the color suggested in the pattern. It is also okay to have a slight difference in yardage. For example, the yarn that has 200 yards or 250 yards will be a pretty good match for this yarn as well. And we can always slightly adjust the gauge by using smaller or bigger needles until we get the gauge that is exactly the same as the gauge recommended in the pattern. So we have these 2 yarns that seem to be a good match, and now there is one more thing to do. The last thing to do is to calculate how many balls of this new yarn, the alternative yarn, we'll need for the project. Let's assume that the pattern calls for 3 balls of this yarn. First step is to calculate the total yardage of yarn required for the project. So 3 balls times 200 meters or 220 yards. I will be calculating in meters because I think in meters, okay? So 3 balls times 200 meters would be 600 meters of yarn. So now we know that for this project we need 600 meters of yarn. Let's get back to this yarn, the new one, the one that is going to be substituted. 600 meters is the total amount of yarn. In one ball of this yarn has 100 meters. So we divide 600 meters by 100 meters and we come up with a number 6. That means we will need 6 balls of yarn, of this yarn, the new yarn, to make the project. Just 3 simple steps, and now we know the yarn we can use instead of the yarn recommended in the pattern, and we know exactly how many balls of that yarn we should get. To make it even easier for you to substitute yarns, I created a simple chart that will help with comparing the yarns. The chart is in the library of free knitting resources. Follow the link in the description to get there and download the chart. Thank you for watching this video and have a wonderful week. I'll see you in the next tutorial.